Have you ever stared into the eyes of a stranger and felt a shiver crawl down your spine? A sense that something is off. We often walk through life oblivious, surrounded by untold stories, hidden darknesses, and souls teetering on the edge. But what happens when that darkness spills out? When the line between victim and perpetrator blurs? And when society is forced to confront the monsters it unwittingly creates? Tonight, we delve into a story that forces us to question everything we think we know about justice, about evil, and about the human capacity for both suffering and inflicting pain. This is a journey into the heart of a case that ignited a firestorm of debate, challenging our perceptions of right and wrong, leaving an indelible mark on the annals of true crime. It's a story of a life unraveling, a descent into despair, and a series of choices that culminated in a chilling, tragic outcome. We'll dissect the events, analyze the complexities, and explore the unsettling truth behind the headlines. Prepare yourself to confront a narrative that will stay with you long after the screen fades to black. And ask yourself, are we ever truly safe? What do you think when you hear the name Alien Wuornos? Let me know in the comments down below. Part 2, The Trail of Crime Now. Let's delve into the heart of darkness. The chilling sequence of events that define the trail of crime left by our perpetrator. We'll call him the Shadow. A moniker that, as you'll soon see, aptly describes his elusive and sinister nature. The genesis of the Shadow. The Shadow's story didn't begin with a bang, but with a whisper. A subtle descent into the abyss that often goes unnoticed until it's too late. Born under the name Elias Thorne, in the seemingly tranquil town of Oakhaven, his early life was, on the surface, unremarkable. A quiet child, often lost in his own world, Elias was neither the star student nor the class troublemaker. Yet, beneath this veneer of normalcy, a storm was brewing. His parents, hard-working, ordinary folk, noticed Elias's growing detachment. He preferred the company of shadows to people, spending hours in the woods behind their house, seemingly conversing with the trees and the wind. They dismissed it as a phase, the quirks of a boy with an overactive imagination. How wrong they were. As Elias transitioned into adolescence, his detachment morphed into something more sinister. It wasn't just a preference for solitude. It was a growing disdain for human connection, a burgeoning fascination with power and control, albeit in small, almost unnoticeable ways. He started with insects, trapping them, studying them, and then, in a chilling precursor to his future crimes, dissecting them with an almost surgical precision. This wasn't the innocent curiosity of a budding scientist. There was a coldness in his eyes, a detached fascination with the act of ending life. His school reports started hinting at this disturbing trend. Elias shows a lack of empathy, one teacher wrote, and seems to derive pleasure from the distress of others, These were red flags, dismissed as teenage angst, as a phase he would surely outgrow. But the phase didn't end. It evolved. He started targeting larger animals, neighborhood pets, not with malice at first, but with a cold, calculating curiosity. He wanted to understand how life worked, and more importantly, how it could be extinguished. It's crucial, dear listeners, to understand that we're not talking about a sudden snap, a violent outburst. This was a slow, methodical descent. A careful construction of a monster, brick by chilling brick. Escalation and the first strike, the shadow's transition from a disturbingly curious adolescent to a criminal, was gradual, marked by a series of escalating incidents that, in hindsight, painted a clear picture of his trajectory. His fascination with control began manifesting in more insidious ways. He became a master manipulator, using his quiet demeanor and sharp intellect to influence those around him, bending them to his will, often with subtle threats and psychological games. He started small, manipulating classmates, teachers, even his own parents. He learned the power of words, the art of deception, and the thrill of getting away with it. This was his training ground, his laboratory where he honed his skills, preparing for a larger stage. Then came the first significant strike, an event that served as the true launch pad for his criminal career. The local library, a grand old building filled with the whispers of countless stories, was set ablaze. The fire, deemed accidental at first, was a carefully orchestrated act of arson. The shadow, now a young man of 22, had meticulously planned it, not out of malice towards the books or the institution, but as a test of his abilities, a grand experiment to see if he could control something as powerful and unpredictable as fire. The thrill of watching the flames dance, of seeing the chaos he had orchestrated, was intoxicating. It was a power he had never felt before, a power that fed his growing darkness. The authorities, baffled by the seemingly random act, never suspected the quiet, unassuming Elias, who watched the spectacle from a distance, a ghost in the night, already planning his next move. This fire was more than just an act of vandalism. It was a statement, a declaration of his presence, a whisper of the terror he was capable of unleashing. And it marked a critical turning point. The shadow had tasted power, and he was hungry for more. He started to develop a signature, a unique element he would later be known for. In this case, after each crime, he started leaving behind a single black feather, a calling card that added a layer of mystery and dread to his actions. It was a symbol of his presence, a whisper of his identity, a taunt to those who would try to catch him. A web of deceit. With the successful execution of the library arson, the shadow's confidence surged. He had proven to himself that he could plan, execute, and escape, leaving authorities none the wiser. This marked the beginning of a new phase, one characterized by a series of increasingly complex and daring crimes, each designed to test his limits and satisfy his growing hunger for power and control. He moved from Oak Haven to the bustling metropolis of Veritas City, a place where he could disappear into the anonymity of the crowd, a city teeming with opportunities for a mind like his. Here, the shadow began to weave a web of deceit, targeting individuals who, in his twisted perception, represented the flaws of society's corrupt officials, greedy businessmen, and those who abused their power. His methods were intricate, meticulously planned. He would study his targets for weeks, even months, learning their routines, their weaknesses, their secrets. He became a master of disguise, a chameleon who could blend into any environment, a ghost who could move through the city unseen. He was always there, in the background, observing the city's secret. His crimes weren't always violent, but they were always impactful. He exposed secrets, ruined reputations, and orchestrated downfalls, all from the shadows, leaving behind only that single, ominous black feather. It became his signature, a symbol of his power, a warning to those who crossed his path, however unknowingly. One notable incident involved the exposure of a prominent city councilman, known for his public image of integrity, but privately mired in corruption. The shadow, through a series of carefully orchestrated leaks and strategically placed evidence, brought the councilman's misdeeds to light, leading to his public disgrace and resignation. The city was in an uproar, praising the anonymous force that brought justice, oblivious to the dark methods employed. Another incident involved a powerful CEO, notorious for his ruthless business practices and exploitation of his employees. The shadow infiltrated the CEO's company, not as an employee, but as a phantom, a silent observer who gathered evidence of the CEO's illegal activities. He then unleashed this information, not to the authorities, but to the media, creating a firestorm of public outrage that ultimately led to the company's collapse and the CEO's ruin. These acts, while seemingly righteous on the surface, were driven by the shadow's twisted sense of justice and his insatiable need for control. He saw himself as a puppet master, pulling the strings of society, punishing those he deemed unworthy, all while remaining hidden in the shadows, a silent arbiter of his own twisted morality. The reign of terror as the shadow's power and influence grew, so did his audacity. His crimes became more elaborate, more daring, and more terrifying. He was no longer content with simply exposing corruption or orchestrating downfalls. He craved a larger stage, a grander spectacle, a reign of terror that would cement his legacy in the annals of crime. This phase was marked by a series of high-profile crimes that shook Veritas City to its core. He targeted institutions, symbols of power and authority, leaving a trail of chaos and fear in his wake. his methods became more sophisticated, incorporating technology, psychology, and a deep understanding of human behavior. The police began realizing that all the crimes that happened in the city lately were all connected. One of his most infamous acts during this period was the blackout of Veritas City's financial district. Through a combination of cyber warfare and carefully placed explosives, the shadow plunged the heart of the city's economy into darkness, causing widespread panic and financial losses. It wasn't just about the money. It was about demonstrating his power, his ability to cripple an entire system with a single, well-executed strike. It was about showing the city how vulnerable it was. Another chilling incident involved the hijacking of the city's communication network. For 24 terrifying hours, the shadow controlled all forms of communication within Veritas City, broadcasting cryptic messages, manipulating information, and sowing discord among the populace. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare, a demonstration of his ability to control not just individuals, but an entire city's narrative. These acts were accompanied by his signature, black feather, now a symbol of fear and dread, a harbinger of chaos. The city was gripped by terror, the citizens living under a constant cloud of fear, unsure of when or where the shadow would strike next. The media dubbed this period the Reign of Terror, a fitting title for the era of fear and uncertainty that the shadow had unleashed. The police were baffled, outmatched by the shadow's intellect and his ability to anticipate their every move. He was always one step ahead, a phantom who seemed to exist outside the boundaries of their reality. Every time they start investigating him deeper, he always find a way to slip away. They tried to profile him, to understand his motives, but he defied categorization. He wasn't driven by greed, or revenge, or any of the usual motives that fueled criminal behavior. He was driven by something else, something darker, something far more complex. The unseen puppeteer, the shadow's reign of terror, reached its peak with a series of acts so audacious, so meticulously planned, that they seemed almost impossible. He had become a master manipulator, not just of individuals, but of entire systems, a puppeteer pulling the strings of a city, dancing to his tune of chaos. He orchestrated events that seemed unconnected, random acts of violence or misfortune, but were, in fact, carefully choreographed pieces of a larger, more sinister puzzle. He used his knowledge of human psychology to exploit the city's fears, turning its citizens each other, creating an atmosphere of paranoia and distrust. This was his ultimate game, his grandest experiment, to see if he could break a city, not through brute force, but through the manipulation of its own inherent weaknesses. One of his most elaborate schemes involved the manipulation of the city's transportation system. Through a series of seemingly unrelated incidents, a train derailment, a bridge closure. A traffic jam of epic proportions, the shadow brought Veritas City to a standstill. The city, already on edge, descended into chaos, with citizens trapped, resources stretched thin, and the authorities overwhelmed. Another involved the contamination of the city's water supply, not with a deadly poison, but with a harmless substance that caused widespread panic and distrust in the government's ability to protect its citizens. The shadow, through carefully placed rumors and manipulated information, amplified this fear, turning a minor incident into a city-wide crisis. The situation got worse as people started blaming each other. These acts were not driven by a desire for destruction, but by a need to control, to demonstrate his power over a city that had become his playground. He was the unseen hand, the silent force that could manipulate events, control narratives, and shape the city's destiny. The authorities, desperate to stop him, launched the largest manhunt in the city's history. They poured all their resources into finding the shadow, analyzing his past crimes, trying to predict his next move. But he was always one step ahead, a ghost in the machine, a phantom who could not be caught. He was now considered as the city's most dangerous man. The citizens of Veritas City, once proud and defiant, were now living in fear. Their lives dictated by the whims of a man they had never seen. A man who existed only in the shadows and the whispers of fear that permeated the city. The shadow had achieved his goal. He had broken the city's spirit, its sense of security, its faith in its own institutions. The police started to realize that they were fighting a losing battle. And yet, even at the height of his power, the shadow remained an enigma. His motives, his ultimate goal, remained shrouded in mystery. Was he simply a madman driven by a lust for chaos? Or was there a deeper purpose to his actions, a twisted logic that only he understood? This was what the police were trying to find out. This, dear listeners, is where the story takes a turn. This is where the hunters become the hunted. While the shadow reveled in his reign of terror, a small group of individuals, driven by a sense of justice and a refusal to surrender to fear, began to unravel the threads of his intricate web. But that, my friends, is a story for the next part of our journey. Stay tuned, for the chase is about to begin. Part 3G. The pursuit of the shadow, the reign of terror inflicted upon Veritas City by the enigmatic figure known as the Shadow, had reached its zenith. Fear permeated every corner of the metropolis, the citizens ensnared in a web of paranoia and uncertainty. Yet, amidst this darkness, a flicker of hope ignited. A dedicated team of investigators, each with their unique skills and unwavering determination, embarked on a relentless pursuit to unmask and apprehend the elusive puppeteer. This is the story of their pursuit. A thrilling chase through a labyrinth of clues, deception, and danger. Assembling the team, the task force assembled to hunt down the Shadow was anything but ordinary. It was a carefully curated group, handpicked for their exceptional abilities and their unwavering commitment to justice. Leading the charge was Detective Miles Corbin, a veteran of the Veritas City Police Department, known for his sharp instincts, his encyclopedic knowledge of the city, and his uncanny ability to connect seemingly unrelated details. Corbin, haunted by the Shadow's escalating crimes and the city's growing despair, made it his personal mission to bring the elusive criminal to justice. Joining Corbin was Agent Isabella, Izzy Diaz, a brilliant FBI profiler, renowned for her ability to delve into the minds of criminals, to understand their motivations, and to predict their next move. Izzy, with her sharp analytical skills and her deep understanding of criminal psychology, was tasked with building a profile of the Shadow, a profile that would hopefully illuminate his identity and his ultimate goal. The third member of this core team was Dr. Eris Thorne, no a very common last name, no relation to the Shadow, a tech expert and a former hacker, recruited for his unparalleled knowledge of the digital underworld. Eris, with his ability to navigate the complex networks of the internet and his understanding of cyber warfare, was crucial in tracking the Shadow's digital footprint, a trail that was as elusive as the man himself. There were some debate when recruiting Eris due to his background. However, Miles believed that Eris's skill is crucial to the investigation. This unlikely trio, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, formed the nucleus of the investigation. They were supported by a team of dedicated officers, analysts, and experts, all working tirelessly to piece together the fragments of the Shadow's intricate web. The city mayor also gave them his full support. Following the feather trail, the initial stages of the investigation were fraught with challenges. The Shadow, true to his moniker, had left behind a trail of cryptic clues, a series of seemingly random events that defied conventional investigation methods. But Detective Corbin, with his intimate knowledge of Veritas City, began to see a pattern, a hidden logic within the chaos. The black feathers, the Shadow's signature, became the focal point of the investigation. Corbin, meticulously analyzing the locations where the feathers were found, discovered a geographical pattern, a series of concentric circles expanding outwards from the city's center. This was a breakthrough, a clue that suggested the Shadow was operating from a central location, a hidden lair within the heart of the city. Agent Diaz, meanwhile, delved into the psychological aspects of the crimes. She studied the victims, the methods, the symbolism of the black feathers, trying to understand the Shadow's motivations, his twisted sense of justice. She developed a profile of a highly intelligent, meticulous individual, driven by a need for control and a desire to expose the flaws of society. A dark mirror reflecting the city's hidden corruption. Dr. Thorne, navigating the digital labyrinth, discovered traces of the Shadow's online activity, fragments of encrypted messages, and access to secure networks. He realized that the Shadow was not just a master of physical disguise, but also a digital ghost, a phantom who could move through the internet unseen, leaving behind only the faintest of digital footprints. The team knew they have to step up their game. These initial findings, while fragmented, provided the team with a starting point, a direction to their pursuit. They had a geographical area to focus on, a psychological profile to refine, and a digital trail to follow. The chase had begun. Close calls and red herrings, the pursuit of the Shadow, was a dangerous game of cat and mouse, a relentless chase through the labyrinthine streets of Veritas City. The team, armed with their growing knowledge of their adversary, began to close in, following the trail of clues, anticipating the Shadow's next move. There were close calls, moments when they felt they were on the verge of capturing him, only to find themselves chasing a ghost, a carefully orchestrated distraction. The Shadow, with his mastery of deception and his ability to anticipate their actions, seemed to always be one step ahead, leading them on a wild goose chase through the city's underbelly. One such instance involved a raid on an abandoned warehouse, identified by Corbin as a potential hideout based on the geographical pattern of the feather locations. The team, expectant to find the Shadow, instead found a room filled with mannequins, each adorned with a black feather, a chilling mockery of their efforts. It was a trap, a carefully planned diversion that left the team frustrated and demoralized. Another close call occurred when Dr. Thorne managed to trace an encrypted message to a specific IP address, located in a bustling apartment complex in the heart of the city. The team, believing they had finally found the Shadow's lair, stormed the apartment, only to find an elderly woman, a retired librarian who had unknowingly been used as a relay for the Shadow's communications. It is clear that the Shadow is a master of deception. These red herrings, while frustrating, provided valuable lessons. They revealed the Shadow's meticulous planning, his ability to manipulate individuals and systems, and his deep understanding of the city's infrastructure. They also highlighted the team's vulnerabilities, their tendency to rely on conventional methods, their need to adapt to the Shadow's unconventional tactics. They had to rethink their entire strategy. Unmasking the Shadow, despite the setbacks and the Shadow's elusive nature, the team persevered, driven by their unwavering determination to bring him to justice. They began to adapt their methods, incorporating unconventional tactics, thinking outside the box, trying to anticipate the Shadow's moves, to understand his twisted logic. Detective Corbin, revisiting the initial crime scenes, discovered a recurring symbol, a small, almost unnoticeable inscription etched into the walls near where the black feathers were found. It was a symbol that, after painstaking research, he identified as belonging to a defunct secret society, a group that had operated in Veritas City decades ago, dedicated to exposing corruption and punishing those they deemed unworthy. This was a major breakthrough. Could the shadow be connected to this society? Is he trying to continue their work? Agent Diaz, refining her profile, realized that the shadow's victims were not chosen randomly. They were all connected, however distantly, to individuals who had been targeted by the secret society in the past. This suggested that the shadow was not just driven by a general desire to expose corruption, but by a specific agenda, a personal vendetta rooted in the city's past. He is not just exposing the corruptions. He was also targeting specific people. Dr. Thorne, using his knowledge of the digital underworld, discovered a hidden online forum, a virtual meeting place for individuals who shared the Shadow's ideology, a group dedicated to continuing the work of the defunct secret society. This was where the Shadow recruited his unwitting pawns, the individuals he manipulated to carry out his plans. They were all being used by the Shadow. These breakthroughs, combined with painstaking analysis of surveillance footage, witness testimonies, and forensic evidence, finally led the team to a naming Elias Thorne. A name that, at first, seemed insignificant. A name that belonged to a quiet, unassuming individual, a man who had lived his entire life in the shadows. But as they delved deeper into Elias Thorne's past, they discovered a disturbing truth, a hidden history that connected him to the secret society, to the victims, and to the reign of terror that had gripped Veritas City. The final confrontation, the unmasking of Elias Thorne as the Shadow sent shockwaves through the investigation team. They had finally pierced the veil of secrecy, identified the man behind the mask. But their relief was short-lived. They knew that capturing him would be their most dangerous challenge yet. He would be prepared for them, ready to unleash his final, most devastating act. Armed with this knowledge, the team raced against time to locate Thorne, knowing that he was likely planning his grand finale, a final act of terror that would cement his legacy. They tracked him to an abandoned observatory on the outskirts of the city, a place that offered a panoramic view of Veritas City, a fitting stage for his final performance. It was the perfect place for him to make his last stand. The ensuing confrontation was a tense, nail-biting showdown between the team and the Shadow. Thorne, cornered but not defeated, unleashed a series of traps and diversions, using his knowledge of the observatory's architecture and his mastery of technology to his advantage. He was determined to go down fighting, Detective Corbin, relying on his instincts and his knowledge of the city, navigated the treacherous environment, anticipating Thorne's moves, trying to outsmart him at his own game. He knew this is his last chance to stop the shadow. Agent Diaz, using her understanding of Thorne's psychology, tried to reason with him, to appeal to whatever shred of humanity remained within him. She knew that if she failed, countless lives would be at risk. Dr. Thorne, battling Thorne's digital defenses, fought to disable his control over the city's infrastructure, preventing him from unleashing further chaos. He knew that one mistake could cost them everything. The climax of the confrontation occurred on the observatory's rooftop, under the vast expanse of the night sky. Corbin, in a final, desperate move, confronted Thorne, not with force, but with the truth, exposing the futility of his actions, the emptiness of his twisted crusade. Thorne, his carefully constructed facade crumbling, his grand plan unraveling, was finally defeated, not by bullets or brute force, but by the weight of his own actions, the realization that his reign of terror had achieved nothing but destruction and despair. He was finally defeated. The capture of the shadow marked the end of an era of fear for Verita's city. The city, scarred but not broken, began to heal, its citizens slowly regaining their sense of security, their faith in justice restored. But the story of the shadow, and the thrilling pursuit that brought him down, would forever be etched in the city's memory. A reminder of the darkness that lurks beneath the surface, and the courage of those who fight to bring it to light. And as for our team, they knew that there are more like the shadow out there, waiting to strike. They must always be prepared. This, dear listeners, is where we leave our story for today. But the questions linger. What drives a man to become a monster? How can we prevent such darkness from taking root? These are questions we must continue to explore. For the pursuit of justice is a never-ending journey. Stay tuned for more. Part 4G, The Criminal Mind, a Psychological Analysis. The capture of Elias Thorne, the man behind the mask of the shadow, brought an end to his reign of terror over Verita's city. But it also raised a host of perplexing questions. What drove this seemingly ordinary individual to become a criminal mastermind? What forces shaped his twisted psyche, transforming him into a symbol of fear and chaos? In this segment, we delve into the depths of the criminal mind, attempting to unravel the psychological tapestry of the shadow, exploring the possible factors that contributed to his descent into darkness. Disclaimer: it is crucial to remember that this is a hypothetical analysis based on a fictional case. Real-life criminal psychology is complex and requires extensive evaluation by trained professionals. This analysis should not be taken as a definitive diagnosis, but rather as an exploration of potential psychological factors. The seeds of darkness sow. Early childhood and development. To understand the shadow, we must journey back to his beginnings, to the formative years that shaped his personality and laid the groundwork for his future actions. Elias Thorne's childhood, while seemingly unremarkable on the surface, held subtle clues, early indicators of the darkness that would later consume him. Attachment theory. One potential avenue of exploration is attachment theory, which posits that early childhood experiences with primary caregivers significantly influence an individual's ability to form healthy relationships later in life. Reports suggest that Elias's parents, though well-intentioned, were emotionally distant, preoccupied with their own struggles. This emotional neglect could have led to an insecure attachment style, characterized by difficulty trusting others, a fear of intimacy, and a deep-seated sense of isolation. Introversion and social isolation. Elias's pronounced introversion, his preference for solitude, and his difficulty connecting with peers further complicated his development. While introversion itself is not inherently pathological, in Elias's case, it may have exacerbated his feelings of alienation, preventing him from developing crucial social skills and fostering a sense of belonging. This isolation, coupled with potential social rejection or bullying, could have fueled resentment and a growing disconnect from societal norms. Early fascination with control. The reports of Elias's early fascination with dissecting insects and controlling small animals raise significant concerns. This behavior, while potentially explainable as morbid curiosity in some children, could also be interpreted as an early manifestation of a need for control, a desire to exert power over vulnerable beings. This fascination, if left unchecked and coupled with other risk factors, could have evolved into a more generalized desire for dominance and manipulation. There are possibilities that he could have been abused as a child. Nature vs. nurture. It is essential to consider the interplay of nature and nurture in Elias's development. While environmental factors undoubtedly played a significant role, there may have been predisposing biological or genetic factors that contributed to his psychological makeup. Research in criminal psychology suggests that certain individuals may have a biological predisposition towards antisocial behavior, potentially linked to differences in brain structure or function, particularly in areas related to empathy, impulse control, and emotional regulation. The adolescent crucible. Identity formation and rebellion adolescence, a period of intense physical, emotional, and psychological change, often serves as a crucible for identity formation. It is during this critical stage that individuals grapple with questions of self, belonging, and purpose. For Elias Thorne, this period appears to have been particularly tumultuous, marked by a deepening sense of alienation and a growing rebellion against societal norms. Identity crisis. Erik Erikson's theory of psychosocial development suggests that adolescence is characterized by an identity crisis, a struggle to define one's sense of self and place in the world. Elias, with his insecure attachment style and social isolation, may have experienced a particularly intense and unresolved identity crisis. His inability to find a place within the conventional social structures could have led him to seek alternative sources of identity and belonging. He started to build his own world. Rebellion and anti-authoritarianism, Elias's growing disdain for authority figures, hinted at in his school reports, suggests a burgeoning anti-authoritarian streak. This rebellion, potentially fueled by perceived injustices or a sense of powerlessness, may have found expression in his fascination with the defunct secret society, a group that, in his eyes, represented a righteous rebellion against a corrupt system. He wanted to be a hero, but in his own way. The power of ideology, the secret society's ideology, with its emphasis on exposing corruption and punishing the unworthy, likely resonated deeply with Elias's developing worldview. It provided him with a framework for understanding the world, a sense of purpose, and a justification for his increasingly antisocial actions. It also gave him a group he could finally fit in, a place where he could share his beliefs. This is where his transformation started. This ideology, however twisted, became a powerful motivating force, shaping his actions and providing a sense of meaning to his increasingly isolated existence. Escalation and desensitization, Elias's transition from manipulating insects and animals to orchestrating acts of arson and sabotage, suggests a gradual escalation of his antisocial behavior. This escalation could be linked to a process of desensitization, where repeated exposure to violence and transgression diminishes the individual's emotional response, making it easier to commit increasingly severe acts. With each crime he committed, his emotions slowly died. The shadows embrace Yeg, constructing a criminal identity as Elias Thorne transitioned into adulthood. His psychological state appears to have undergone a significant transformation. He shed his former identity, embracing the person of the shadow, a symbol of his rebellion, his power, and his twisted sense of justice. This transformation likely involved a complex interplay of psychological processes. Cognitive distortions. The shadow's actions suggest the presence of significant cognitive distortions, distorted ways of thinking that served to justify his crimes and maintain his self-image. He may have engaged in black and white thinking, categorizing individuals as either corrupt or righteous, with no room for nuance or complexity. He may have also employed rationalization, justifying his actions as necessary to expose the flaws of society, and minimization, downplaying the harm caused by his crimes. He saw the world in his own view. Narcissistic traitsing. The shadow's grandiosity, his need for admiration, and his apparent lack of empathy suggestions of narcissistic traits. He may have viewed himself as superior to others, a righteous figure destined to cleanse society of its impurities. This inflated sense of self could have fueled his desire for power and control, driving him to orchestrate increasingly elaborate and destructive acts. He was obsessed with his own justice. Psychopathy and antisocial personality disorder. While it is crucial to avoid armchair diagnosis, the shadow's actions raise the possibility of psychopathy or antisocial personality disorder. These conditions are characterized by a persistent disregard for the rights of others, a lack of remorse, and a pattern of deceitful and manipulative behavior. The shadow's meticulous planning, his calculated use of violence, and his apparent lack of emotional response to the suffering he caused could be interpreted as indicators of these conditions. The role of fantasing, the shadow's elaborate crimes, his use of symbolism, and his theatrical flair suggest a rich fantasy life. He may have derived a sense of power and satisfaction from constructing elaborate scenarios, playing the role of the avenging angel, the righteous punisher. This fantasy world could have served as an escape from the mundane reality of his life, a realm where he could exercise control and achieve a distorted sense of purpose. He created a world of his own. The unseen scarce trauma and its manifestations, while the shadow's actions were undoubtedly destructive and harmful. It is essential to consider the possibility that he himself may have been a victim of trauma. While this does not excuse his crimes, it may provide a deeper understanding of the psychological forces that shaped his behavior. Possible trauma. While the details of Elias Thorne's past remain largely unknown, there are hints at potential traumatic experiences. His emotional neglect during childhood could be considered a form of emotional abuse. There is also the possibility of other, more severe forms of trauma, such as physical or sexual abuse, the details of which may have been suppressed or hidden. The police could never find any evidence that could prove that he had been abused. Dissociation and fragmentation. Trauma can lead to dissociation, a psychological defense mechanism where the individual mentally separates themselves from the traumatic experience. This can manifest in various ways, including memory loss, emotional numbing, and the development of alternate identities. It is possible that the persona of the shadow was, in part, a manifestation of dissociation, a way for Elias Thorne to distance himself from the pain and trauma of his past. Trauma-informed perspective. Adopting a trauma-informed perspective does not seek to excuse the shadow's actions, but rather to understand them within a broader context. It recognizes that individuals who have experienced trauma may develop maladaptive coping mechanisms, including violence and aggression, as a way to manage their overwhelming emotions and regain a sense of control. They may start to lose themselves. The cycle of violence. Research suggests that individuals who have been victims of abuse are at an increased risk of becoming perpetrators of violence themselves. This cycle of violence is a complex phenomenon, but it highlights the potential long-term consequences of trauma and the importance of early intervention and support for individuals who have experienced abuse. It is possible that they may become what they hated the most. The shadow's legacying, implications and reflections. The case of the shadow provides a chilling illustration of the complexities of the criminal mind. The intricate interplay of nature and nurture, and the devastating consequences of unchecked psychological distress. While we may never fully understand the depths of Elias Thorne's psyche, his story offers valuable insights into the potential pathways to criminal behavior and the importance of early intervention and prevention. The importance of early intervention. The Shadow's case highlights the critical importance of early identification and intervention for children and adolescents who exhibit signs of emotional distress, social isolation, or antisocial behavior. Early intervention programs, including family therapy, individual counseling, and social skills training, can help address underlying issues, promote healthy development, and potentially prevent the escalation of problematic behaviors. The need for comprehensive mental health care. The case also underscores the need for comprehensive and accessible mental health care services for individuals of all ages. Mental health issues, including trauma, attachment disorders, and personality disorders, are often at the root of criminal behavior. Providing timely and effective treatment for these conditions can not only improve individual well-being, but also contribute to a safer and more just society. The limits of profiling. While psychological profiling can be a valuable tool in criminal investigations, the Shadow's case demonstrates its limitations. He defied easy categorization, highlighting the need for a nuanced and individualized approach to understanding criminal behavior. Profiling should be used as one tool among many, and it should always be combined with thorough investigation and a consideration of the unique circumstances of each case. The power of empathy and understanding. Ultimately, the story of the Shadow challenges us to look beyond the surface of criminal behavior, to seek a deeper understanding of the complex psychological forces that drive individuals to commit acts of violence and destruction. While we must hold individuals accountable for their actions, we must also strive to cultivate empathy and understanding, recognizing that even the most seemingly monstrous individuals may be carrying deep, unseen scares. The case of the Shadow is a stark reminder that the human mind is a complex and often mysterious realm. While we may never fully unravel the enigma of Elias Thorne, His story serves as a cautionary tale, a call for greater understanding, and a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to seek justice and healing in the face of darkness. As we continue to grapple with the challenges of crime and violence, let us remember the lessons learned from the shadow's reign of terror and strive to create a society that is both just and compassionate. A society that seeks not only to punish, but also to understand and to heal. This concludes our psychological analysis of the shadow. The final part will offer concluding thoughts and a call to action. Stay tuned. Part 5, The Shadow's Legacy. Lessons learned. The shadow's reign of terror is over, but the questions linger. His story, a chilling tapestry of darkness and intrigue, serves as a potent reminder of the fragility of the human psyche and the societal structures we inhabit. Elias Thorne's descent into the abyss wasn't solely his own. It was a reflection of unaddressed societal ills, missed opportunities for intervention, and the pervasive shadows that can fester in the neglected corners of our communities. But amidst the darkness, glimmers of hope persist. The unwavering dedication of Detective Corbin, Agent Diaz, and Dr. Thorne represents the indomitable spirit of justice, the relentless pursuit of truth that ultimately brought the shadow's reign to an end. Their victory wasn't just about capturing a criminal. It was about reclaiming a city from the clutches of fear and restoring faith in the possibility of a brighter future. Let the shadow's story be a catalyst for change. Let it ignite conversations about mental health, early intervention, and the importance of fostering empathy and understanding. Let us strive to build communities where individuals feel seen, heard, and supported, where the seeds of darkness are replaced with the light of compassion and resilience. This is a call to action, a plea for a more just and humane society. We all have a role to play in building a world where the shadows of the past no longer dictate the realities of the present. Let's choose to be the light. If you found this deep dive into the Shadows case compelling, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more explorations into the world of true crime and the complexities of the human mind. Your support allows us to continue bringing these vital stories to light. And remember to hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and stay safe.